All right.
Thank you, Adrian, for your great session. Thank you for speaking at WordCamp India. We have a few questions from our audience. Uh, let's go with the first question. So, how do you work in a team and manage a single CSS file? So, if you worked in a team, how do you keep version control?
Well, internally, I manage a number of products and with multiple people working at them at the same time. And we use pretty much what I think everybody else uses, and we just use GitHub to do all version control. It logs all of people's commits, and you can check differences and all of that thing and all of that fun stuff. So if you've got multiple people working on the same project, I think GitHub is probably the best free option currently available. So that's at least how we do it internally.
Okay, so we have our next question here. As long as we abide by the timeline promised to the customer, so it doesn't matter whether your product takes 9 days or 90 days to launch, right? So as long as you're in sync with the promised timeline, should be good.
I think as someone who's worked in an agency environment for many years, fortunately no longer, I moved to Product Life, but before that, agency for 3.5 years, we always come up with timelines to guide the customer, because it's always the customer and the client, especially in an agency context, that's the holdup for actually getting things done. It's rarely on the part of the developer or the agency that the project gets stalled. It's always the customer wants to change something, or they add something that was unknown in the original scope, and it just throws your timeline of what was originally agreed to in the contract way off. It's just that just happens pretty much all the time. I don't think I've ever worked on a project where there wasn't like a wrench thrown in the middle and just it caused a delay or whatever. That's just the nature of the work. So establishing early milestones and early timelines is important, but this presentation was less about here's how you establish timelines in your contract with a customer, but more about how you internally how you communicate with the customer about the way that you work. If they understand that the project or their website or whatever it is that they're working on is going to be deployed before it is complete, quote unquote. Clients don't really understand that complete in WordPress doesn't exist, or in any sort of digital project. Nothing is ever finished.
So do you have any tips for the optimization stage, which, as you said, goes on for forever? Do you have any tips on making changes on the go?
Yeah, so once they understand that WordPress development and digital development just goes on forever, you can get it out the door ASAP, a lot easier, and then work on those changes and work on their changes and the things that they want to improve on the go. And what I have to say for that is, as you work with your clients long-term, hopefully this creates a long-term relationship with your client, which we always love, and they just pay their monthly retainer or whatever it is that you're charging. You will develop systems and processes as your relationship matures. At first, the thing about deploying brand new projects is that typically you're deploying to no one. Like there's no audience at the beginning, or at least it's a very small audience, and that audience will grow and mature over time as you exploit marketing and other social media channels, etc.
So how do you figure out? Yeah,
sorry.
Go on.
So as that happens, and at the beginning, as the audience grows, you can just log into WordPress and you can just do live updates or take the site down or put it like in, put up a thing. Obviously, that is less effective as there's more traffic and more audience, taking a site down to work on it is obviously at that point no longer a viable option. So that's when you would start to implement release schedules and update schedules, and you'd actually plan certain times of day to do certain things. You plan scheduled site maintenance, or you do the popular option, which is you have a staging environment where you're working on everything. There's a lot of hosting companies that make staging environments super accessible, and you can have one-click push to production. If you are doing that, it's difficult to have live content or dynamic content on the site of which you're working on. What I mean by that is you have like WooCommerce or LearnDash or lots of active users or anything. The staging to production is no longer possible because that's going to overwrite the whole database and all of the changes that happened recently. So if that's the plan, or if that's the strategy that you want to use early on, you're going to have to make the technical choice to have two properties, one where you're going to have all of your dynamic and your live information, and then one, maybe the static marketing site, which is the one that gets iterated and improved over time. Personally, in my own organization, I do a lot of the site maintenance myself. I have a few people who help me with the site maintenance as well. And we just do it whenever we feel like it, because we're still just in that phase where you just got to get things done. And if they don't get done, then money is left on the table. So we just log into WordPress, and if you got to run a few updates at 5 a.m. in the morning, that's what you got to do. If you got to update a page live while people are on it, that's what you got to do. And that's okay. Most people, right? I think a lot of developers, or maybe a lot of customers, think that if they're doing those things, people will care. The truth of it is that they don't. And most times, like, consumers and site visitors won't even notice that between one page visit and the next page visit that the whole menu changed. They're just like, oh, there's new options. Great. So I just want to, I'll put that thought out there. I'll put that seed out there that making live changes on the site isn't necessarily like terrible. No one's going to notice.
Okay. So a lot of, all right, we have the next question here. If I publish my work before it's finished, won't people think I'm unprofessional?
No, I don't think so. I did that. So when I originally launched Groundhog a couple years ago, it was janky is the word that I'm going to use to describe it. It got the job done, though, and it delivered on the promise. Here's the thing. You will only be considered unprofessional if the product that you deliver...
Let me just interrupt you here.
Yeah.
So janky, as in, I'm assuming you mean in terms of the design and the user experience, and not the core functionality itself, right?
Exactly. Right. So it was janky in terms of the user experience and the actual design of it, but it delivered on the promise that we said it would. And that's the difference. So if you're selling a product on a website and you are unable to deliver on the promise that you made when they invested, that is unprofessionalism. But it could be, UI straight out of the 70s, and it can be, mediocre user experience, or, there could be typos all over the place. But as long as the end user is able to do the thing which you promised, you're golden. That's success. Yep. And especially in the agency context, clients don't always understand that. They think everything has to be perfect in order for people to see value in the thing that they built. And that's just not true. The value comes from solving a problem. And you can solve a problem 1,000 different ways with 1,000 different designs and 1,000 different customer journeys. But as long as they get to that bottom, that's value.
How do you suggest dealing with such clients? So if they want everything to be perfect, do you have any suggestions?
Well, first of all, don't work with those clients. I'll elaborate on that.
Yes.
We as agencies, if in fact it's the agencies who are on this call listening, we as agencies have choice. New businesses start every day. There's thousands of jobs on Upwork. There's hundreds of thousands of people on Fiverr, and there's just like hundreds of people on Twitter saying, I need help with X, or I want to start this, or so we are not starved for choice when finding clients, but we always kind of just, as soon as we get an email, we're like, yes, I want to work with you. To that, I'd say maybe it's time to introduce a vetting process to the people that you work with and start charging more. I saw a great meme the other day, and it was a comment from a client that they were paying $500 and a client that was paying $50,000 for a project. The $500 client said, I just want to make sure that before I send you the money that we're both on the same page about the vibe and about, the end goals. And I want to make sure that all of these things are going to be ready. And I want to make sure that that you're going to be there, 24/7 to answer all of my needs. And then the comment from the $50,000 client was, money sent. Let me know when it's done. And that's it's so true. Like, that's the people, the clients who pay less are more trouble and require more hand holding and require, just so much more involvement and investment than really they're worth. And the people who charge more are just so much easier to work with because, they understand that you're the expert. And if they can invest $50,000, they probably got other stuff going on. So they're just going to stay out of it, right? If they're only paying $500, that means that they don't have anything else going on. So their full attention and focus is going to be on this project and you don't want that because you're the expert, you're the subject matter expert, you're the person who's actually doing the implementation, who has the experience, who has all those things. So raise price, my answer to that is if you don't want to work with the people, the clients that are going to be problematic, raise prices, vet your clients, get on a call, be like, hey, listen, this is the way that we work. Your site, even if it has like a coming soon page or, stuff isn't working or the design isn't perfect, it's going out. It's getting out there because we understand that is the best way to get you the result that you're looking for.
So what you're saying is don't be afraid to make your own rules and choose clients wisely.
Yes, don't be afraid. Absolutely, don't be afraid to make your own rules. If you want to work with a client, it's your business when you're working with a client, right? You're the agency. Right. You have a business to run, and if the client's allowed to make the rules, you're also allowed to make rules. So when you choose to start a relationship with a client, you can absolutely say, this is the way that we work. And if you want to work with, an agency that you're going to totally dominate, and that's going to cause your project to never be able to reach a point where people actually pay you money in exchange for the delivery of content, then you can work with somebody else. But if you work with us, here's our guarantee, launched in 90 days or less, if you follow our rules.
Right. So we're kind of stretching our time here. We'll have one last question. So can you share a few anecdotes using this process for one of your own projects?
Absolutely. I'll just use Groundhog as the example. So in 2018 is when we launched Groundhog. In June, I decided that I wasn't going back to university. I dropped out. And I wanted to decide, or I was trying to think of, all right, well, what am I going to do instead? Right. If I'm not going to university, I was working in the agency, but I didn't really want to do that for the rest of my life. As much as I love doing agency work and working with agencies, I just being the person working on other people's projects and seeing them succeed was like, I want to do that for me. Because, our agency gets hired and we turn like $5,000 of investment into $500,000. And I'm like, well, if I can do that for other people, I want to do that for me. So what the hell am I going to do? I decided to go into the WordPress plugin space. I knew a lot about CRM and marketing automation. So in August is when I'm like, we're going to build this plugin. We're going to build this CRM and marketing automation plugin. And I made a commitment that we would have a product by September. And we did. And it was janky. And the UI was not, but it worked. And it delivered on the process. We set up the site. First off, we actually built the product. That was number one. You have to be able to deliver on the promise that you're making. So we delivered on the thing that we were actually going to be selling. So we did that. And then the next thing, I just followed the exact same process that I mentioned in the deck. Number one, fulfillment. We have to be able to fulfill on the promise. So we got the product. We set up easy digital downloads to actually distribute the product and to collect the payment. And then marketing. We just said, we got on the repo and we said, hey, this thing exists. And we did all of that in September. And that is why I am, on WordCamp today, talking about this. Like, was it beautiful? No. Did it work? Yes. Was it the best user experience? No. Did people care? No, they didn't care. They still bought. They still gave us money. And that is what I would probably qualify as success.
Thank you, Adrian. Looks like our time is up. So it's been great having you here. Thank you, and we'll close this session.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.